Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. Now, this is a bit of a special episode. Why? I'm going to deal with the topic of fantasy football. What is it? How do you play it? I have received this question quite a bit, and I thought, let me answer it in a way that I don't have to keep repeating myself and have a place I could point people to answer this question. I am hoping that this will be very helpful and user-friendly for anybody at any level. So, what is fantasy football? It is a free-to-play fantasy football game. Free, and up to now, the 11 million plus players globally playing this game. But what does that mean? So, basically, it means that you are a manager. Not a real one, of course, and that's why fantasy. So, what does this mean? The English Premier League has created a game that allows you to make your fantasy team with a budget of £100 million of fake money, and your job is to get a collection of great players in order to earn the most points. And the person that has the most points at the end of the season is the winner. Now, that sounds easy enough, but what goes into it? Now, you are only allowed to choose 3 players from each Premier League team. So even if you're an Arsenal fan or a Manchester United fan, you can't have 11 Manchester United players or 11 Arsenal players. You have to have a combination of 15 players, 11 starting and 4 on the bench. So this is to test your ability to manage 100 million and get the most bang for your pound. The purpose of this is to get you more interested in teams and players outside your favorite team, which will make you more engaged with the product that is the Premier League. Of course, it tests other things like how well do you know your team? How well do you know Premier League players? Also, how much are you willing to test your knowledge against others? And this has created mini leagues and the whole FPL community as you know it. People trying to prove that they know more and also have a new way to enjoy the Premier League, which makes them more interested in teams that they would have never known, and it enriches the experience. Because when people start saying Alexander Isak, or they start talking about players like Ait Nouri, somebody who's a FPL manager will know who that player is because he has been performing for their team. Or rather, he has been punished for not even having that player. So it seems I'm going ahead of myself. So how do you play Fantasy Premier League? Now, your job is to use £100 million to create the best team that you can. Who are the players? The players are the real life Premier League players playing each and every game week. A season is split into 38 game weeks. And each week, you choose which player to have into your team. Now, the real trick is that you are really trying to get the best performers at each position, not necessarily the best players. When I started, Claude Makelele was in Chelsea. And for those who know football and its history, he has been one of the best defensive midfielders, if not the best of all time. So I thought having a player like him would be amazing. So I put Claude Makelele into my team, and he caught nothing, because that's not the objective of the game. It is not to have the best defensive midfielder, or the best right back, or the best central midfielder. No, your job is to choose the best player in terms of points acquisition. So if you know Premier League history, it would have been great for you to have Thierry Henry, Cristiano Ronaldo in one team with Ruud van Nistelrooy. You know, players who score, Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, players who either score or assist, or defenders who will not concede a goal. Or if you get a defender who will score. So, for example, if you're getting a striker, you want a striker who will either be scoring or assisting goals and is either great value or obvious. Like, for example, Haaland recently has been a really great purchase, at least for the first half of the season. He scores goals, and that's what you want from a striker. However, he's very expensive, and this can affect the makeup of the rest of your squad because you want to be able to fill in your squad with players who will get you points everywhere. So if you stack your squad with too many expensive players, you will maybe be unable to complete your team. And that's where the real gamesmanship of this whole comes in. You have to be able to strike a balance that works well for your goals. So the real trick is to get the best value for your money. So you have to choose players who will perform, but at the greatest value. For example, in midfield, Salah at any cost. For example, last season, he was the best Premier League performer. And not only that, it was probably his historic best performance. So even if he was like 13.0, he was worth every penny. Not having him meant that you lost. It's very clear. It wasn't even complicated. And there's some people who are obvious. You're looking for players who will consistently perform and deliver either goals or assists. And each position requires something different. A striker, definitely you're looking for somebody who will score goals. And if there's nobody who can score goals, maybe the cheapest one who can score goals and maybe provide an assist. With midfielders, you're looking for the same. Somebody who is affordable, who will get you goals or assists, or one or the other. And in defenders, yeah, of course, if you can find somebody who can score, that is amazing. In defense, you're looking for somebody either who can create or get clean sheets. Creators are expensive, so you have a person like Trent Alexander-Arnold last season in the last couple of years, who was somebody who would create goals. Aït-Nouri, who just went to Manchester City, was great because he always ended up in random positions to score goals. And now that also distracts me a little bit, but also one of the things that's important is to look for players who are slightly played out of position. And by that, let me take you further back. Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale was at Spurs. Initially, he was registered as a fullback. Due to injuries to other players, he found himself playing up higher on the pitch, more like a winger. And they stumbled onto this great finding that Gareth Bale was actually a natural born winger. He created goals, he scored goals. And this is crucial because in fantasy football, it is important to know that, for example, a goal for a striker is worth 4 points. A goal scored by a midfielder is worth 5 points. A goal scored by a defender is worth 6 points. And a goal scored by a goalkeeper is worth 10 points. So now, Gareth Bale, as a defender, was getting 6 points per goal while other players were getting less. And having a player like that who is played out of position but performs is a great find in fantasy football. So you should always keep your ears and eyes open for players who are mislabeled. And the reason I used Aït-Nouri earlier is because Wolves were using him as a winger and he's registered as a defender. When it comes to choosing goalkeepers, you have to choose somebody who keeps the most clean sheets or is likely to save a penalty or is likely to save many shots, a shot stopper. Now, if you're approaching this game for the first time, you'd probably think that the best goalkeeper is probably, like, say, Alisson from Liverpool or Ederson from Manchester City. Definitely not any of the Chelsea keepers. But you'd be surprised to find out that the keeper that performs the most over the last few years has been Pickford from Everton. And it's because Everton are good at defense and Pickford makes many saves. The real trick of fantasy football is to not let emotions guide you blindly, because that is when you will make very many poor decisions and you will be slow to make efficient decisions at the right time, even when you know it's the right time. Fantasy Premier League is just about letting go of your preconceptions. As I alluded earlier, your goal is to get the players who will give you the most points. So, what are these points? Okay, so like I said just a little bit earlier, for goals scored, if your striker scores a goal, he gets 4 points. If your midfielder scores, you get 5 points. If your defender scores, he gets 6 points. If your goalkeeper scores, he gets 10 points. So, as you can tell, the further away from goal the person scores, and by that I mean positionally. If it's your goalkeeper, he gets the most points for scoring. If it's your defender, he gets more points than a midfielder. A midfielder gets more points than a striker, which raises a question. Why have an expensive striker if his goal value is so low? And these are the questions you have to think about. Is it worth it having a striker who is 14 and scores maybe once every 6 games versus a midfielder who scores every 2 games? Don't be fooled by names. Go for performance. As you are aware, a game of football lasts 90 minutes. Now, if your player plays up to 60 minutes, they get 1 point. If they play 59.59, they get 0. If they play more than 60 minutes, they get 2 points. So if your player, let's say Haaland, has played 90 minutes, he'll get 2 points for playing 90 minutes. And if he scores a goal, which is 4, he'll have 6 points for playing 90 minutes and scoring a goal. If a player has an assist, the assist is worth 3 points regardless of position. Goals have value depending on who scores them, but assists are consistent regardless of who gives them. 3 points. So, in the previous example, if Haaland plays 90 minutes, he has 2 points. If he has a goal, it'll be an additional 4 points, which makes it 6. If he has an assist, he will have 3 points, which will make it 9. Now, you might be thinking that this game favors attack, and you wouldn't be wrong, because like I previously said, a player like Makelele and defensive midfielders are the ones who suffer the most in Fantasy Premier League. However, they've tried to make it somehow interesting for defenders, and this is clean sheets. If a team goes 90 minutes without conceding a goal, the defenders and the goalkeeper will get 4 points each. Now, if a defender plays for 60 minutes and is substituted after, he gets, for example, 2 points for playing up to 60 minutes, and then he gets 4 points for the clean sheet. If he is subbed in the 61st minute and they get a goal conceded for his team in the 62nd minute, he still stays with his 6 points, even if the other defenders will go down to 2 for only having played now the 90 minutes. Does that make sense? Your points are frozen up to where you were. So if you come off at 60 minutes and you didn't concede a goal, that is 6 points. 2 points for reaching 60 and 4 points for the clean sheet. Midfielders get 1 point for a clean sheet. So if they play 61 minutes, they will have 2 points for the 61 minutes and 1 point for the clean sheet. If they're substituted then, that is fine. They'll stay with their 3 points. However, if they concede a goal after that, that point will be deducted and they will be left with 2. When it comes to goalkeepers, in order to also make this position stronger, if they play, of course, 60 plus to 90, they get 2 points. If they keep a clean sheet, they get 4 points. So if he plays 90 minutes and he doesn't concede a goal, that is 6 points. After that, for every 3 saves the goalkeeper makes, they get a point. So if, for example, he makes 6 saves, he gets an additional 2 points. So 2 points, clean sheet 6 points, and then 2 points, which will make him have 8. If the goalkeeper saves a penalty, they will be awarded 5 points. So imagine your goalkeeper has kept a clean sheet. So he has played 90 minutes So he's got 2. He's kept a clean sheet. He's got 6. He made 6 saves. So he's got 2 points. That's 8. And then he saved a penalty, 13 points. So you see how you have to start thinking about the kind of goalkeeper you want. Now, in terms of more positive points, if your player is the best performing player of the match, they get 3 points. If they're the second best performer, they get 2 points. If they are the third best performer, they get 1 point. And after that, nobody else gets bonus points. So your 3 best performers get bonus points. So in the previous example where the goalkeeper saved and had a clean sheet and had 13 points, if they're deemed to be the man of the match, they will get an additional 3 points, which will make that total 16. Now, there are also points that can be deducted from your player. For example, if you have a penalty taker and they miss the penalty, they will be deducted 2 points. If you have a player who concedes 2 goals, they get deducted 1 point. So the more goals they concede in multiples of 2, you get deducted 1. So if you concede 2 goals, you lose 1 point. If you concede 4 goals, you lose 2 points. If you concede 6 goals, you lose 3 points. If your player receives a yellow card, they lose 1 point. If your player gets a red card, they lose 3 points. And not only that, if they get a red card, they will still be punished if their team concedes goals after that, particularly if they're defense-based, like a goalkeeper defender. So if they get sent off and they lose 6-0, they will be deducted 3 points, even if their sending off happened and the goals were conceded after the sending off. If your player scores an own goal, they get -2 points. Now, one of the things that may be confusing for somebody who is just joining fantasy football is the concept of an assist. Now, an assist is the last person who passes the ball to the person who scores. If that person is your player will get the points. However, if your player passes the ball to the person who's going to score, but then somehow that player loses the ball and then gets it back and then scores, there is no assist provided. If your player kicks the ball and then it hits a defender and then goes in for an own goal, your player gets the assist. If your player is fouled and the result is a free kick or a penalty, which is then scored by the next player, that is an assist. If your player shoots the ball and it hits the post or is sort of parried by the keeper and then another player gets the ball, that is also an assist. And I hope this is helping you think about the kind of players that you need to have. 1, a penalty taker. 2, the kind of player who gets tackled and brought down a lot and is more likely to get a penalty. 3, maybe a person who can do both of those things. Or a goalkeeper who is good at making those kind of saves. Like I had said earlier, the game weeks are 38. A season lasts 38 game weeks. Now, a transfer is not free. If you decide after game week 1, for example, that you must remove one of your players, you get 1 free transfer per week. If you want to make additional changes, there are options. 1 is the wildcard. You have 2 per season. 1 is given to you at the beginning to last you up to December, and another one from December to the end of the season. So you have 2 wildcards. A wildcard will allow you to make unlimited transfers for 1 window. So you can change your whole team if you want. If you're not going to use that, and let's say you want to make 2 transfers, the next thing you can do is make the transfer, but each additional transfer after the free transfer will cost you a deduction of 4 points. So you have to really think about whether that is worth it. And you have to remember that your job is to accumulate as many points as possible. and to lose as few as possible. And it means that the team you choose initially is important. Of course, there are things that you can't help. Players get injured all the time, people get red cards, and they have to be substituted. But this is also the value of choosing 15 good players. But anyway, back to points. Now, each additional transfer will cost you 4 points. And those negative 4 points will accumulate. However, if you are patient, you can accumulate up to 5 free transfers. If you do not make any substitution in 5 game weeks in a row, you will accumulate up to 5 free transfers. If you continue to the 6th one, that's it. It's capped and maxed out at 5. It used to be 2, and last season they increased it to 5. And so patience is a virtue in this kind of situation. Every football team has a captain, and you are allowed to choose any player on the pitch to be your captain, and you are allowed to choose a vice captain. Why is this important? Because each captain gets double points. So if in the previous example you chose the goalkeeper who got 13 points, if he was your captain, he gets you 26 points. And so it is very important to choose the player that you believe will perform best each game week. How would you determine this? You have to look at the fixtures and form and decide if Haaland is more likely to score against a promoted side or against Liverpool. And looking at that, you might decide that he is more likely to score against the easier team, so you put him as your captain for the easier team, and then change the captaincy for another player in the next game week who has a better chance of performing better according to the fixture. Now, it is also important to choose your vice captain as carefully. There are situations where your captain will not play or your team will not play. Like 2 seasons ago, or let me say a couple of seasons ago, Liverpool did not play. There was a storm, and because of that, everybody had Captain Salah. Though I think they went to play Everton or something. But that match did not happen because there was a storm and the match was postponed. Now, because the match was postponed, you lost your captain instantly. And it was important to have chosen a good vice captain. Thankfully, people like me and others had chosen Palmer that season. And Palmer performed. He got 14 points, which was 28 as captain. And in many ways, we do not know if Salah would have done as well. And that is just the value of having a vice captain. And it is always important to choose your captain and vice captain as players who will be playing, so that if one does not play, they are compensated by the other. If you choose a captain and a vice captain that do not play, you do not get any double points. Keep that in mind. When you have chosen your team and submitted it, you've chosen your team name, your colors, and you filled in the information about the things that you are and you like, it will be put into the Global League, which is just a league where everybody who plays this game is in. There are other alternatives, and many leagues come into it. For example, I run one which is called 38 Weeks to Go, based on the 38 game weeks of the season. And there are cups, and there is head-to-head. There is an additional game that they added and a few other ones, but I'm not going to get into that because that is going too much out of detail. But basically you have 3: head-to-head, the private league, and the cups. In the private leagues, which we call mini leagues, you join with your friends or institutions you're interested in, or just things you're interested in, you join it, and the rankings begin once game week 1 starts, or whatever the rules for the game have been set as by the administrator. Now, usually to join these leagues, if you want to form one, you will be given the way to form it in leagues, and there's a league section in the fantasy football page. You can join one, and you can use a code to join, or if you create a league, you can create a link and give it to others, and they'll click and they'll be added into the table for that league. You can only compete up to 30 different mini leagues, but there is no amount of leagues. I mean, there are no amount of participants that is not allowed. Basically, there's no limitation on the amount of players you can have in the league. Sorry for that confusing sentence. When it comes to head-to-head leagues, this is just to add extra excitement, and managers will play directly against another team in the league each game week. And the match result is based on the game week score of each team minus any transfer points spent preparing for the game week. So if we're playing and I tie with you and we, for example, both got 60 and I took a hit of -4 because I made 2 transfers and you didn't make any transfers, you will win the head-to-head because you didn't lose any points while I lost 4, even though we both got 60, because essentially I got 56. When it comes to the scoring system, it's just like the league that you know. 3 points for a win and 1 for a draw. Now, moving on to cups. Every team is randomly entered into a cup at a later point of the season. Like, you know, the cups never start at the beginning, they sort of start mid. So around December is when many of the cups start. You're randomly drawn against somebody, and if you win the head-to-head, it's really a head-to-head but a cup. So if you win, you just continue moving forward until you are either eventually champion or you are knocked out. That one is really the luck of the draw. In order to make the game more interesting, they added chips. And I've already mentioned the chip earlier when I said the wild card and you're given 2. There are a couple of chips that are given to each manager every season. There is the wild card, the bench boost, the free hit, triple captain, and the mystery chip. The bench boost allows you to get points from the players on your bench, because ordinarily you will not get points from your bench unless one of your players did not play and the bench player comes on. In this situation, the bench boost means that whether your players come on or not, you get those points. So let's say you got 50 points from the 11 players who played. You have 15 points on the bench. Ordinarily, those 15 points on the bench will just stay on the bench and you only get the 50. But if you use the bench boost, you will get 50 plus the 15 points on the bench, which would give you a total of 65 points. Then there's the free hit. The free hit is like a temporary wildcard. And what I mean by that is for 1 week only, you can make any team that your heart desires without any repercussions of losing points. However, at the end of that game week, your free hit will finish and your squad will go back to the squad that it was before you chose the free hit. So the free hit is a temporary wildcard. And because game week 1 is already pretty much a wildcard week, you cannot use your free hit on game week 1. Triple captain is exactly like it sounds. If your captain has 15 points, it is doubled and you will have 30 points. However, if he is triple captained, he will have 45 points. You see, it's quite valuable. Then you have wildcards. Wildcards allow you to make unlimited permanent transfers at no cost. You are given 2, one in between the first half of the season and the second one for the second half of the season. It expires on December 27 for the first one. I learned that the hard way. And then the second one, of course, expires before the last game week. They introduced the most recent chip, which is called the Assistant Manager chip. And in this one, first of all, it becomes playable from game week 24. And you will be able to buy a Premier League manager. So if you ever wanted Pep to be in your team, or Arne Slot, or any other manager to be in your team, they are there. If their team wins, you get 6 points. If their team draws, you get 3 points. If their team
scores, they get 1 point. If they keep a clean sheet, they get 2 points. If your manager's team is playing a team 5 positions on the league table, on the Premier League table, not your table, on the Premier League table, if they play a team 5 positions higher and they get a victory, that manager gets 10 points per win. So you can see how valuable it can be. For example, last season when Moyes came, he was over-delivering. And then Crystal Palace also started doing that. And so if you look for a team that's in form, they can deliver. Now, the thing about this chip is that it is played for 3 consecutive weeks. So, for example, if you activate it in Game Week 24, it will be active for Game Week 24, Game Week 25, and Game Week 26. And you cannot remove it in those 3 weeks. You just have to let it run. So choosing when to use this and also to choose when to use any of the other chips is of the most important thing you could do strategically. It is also important to know that you cannot stack these chips. For example, you can't use a wild card and then triple captain and then bench boost and then play assistant manager. I mean, that would be crazy. But you can only use one chip at a time. So you have to choose when to use each chip. So you see, you have been given weapons to use. And it's all about when you will unleash this weapon that you have. If it is not yet clear, fantasy is a game of strategy. It's about choosing the right captain, knowing when to lose points, knowing when to play your chips, and knowing when to let go of players, and when to get players. It's a game of constantly monitoring players, knowing which one fits your budget and value that you can afford. When it comes to putting out your team on the pitch, you have to use legitimate football tactics. And by that I mean, you can't have 5 strikers and 1 defender. It doesn't make sense. But you can play 5 defenders, 3 midfielders, 2 strikers. You could play 3 strikers, 3 midfielders, 4 defenders. 4-3-3, 4-4-2, 4-5-1. These are all valid football formations. And over the most recent years, over the 2020s, let me speak more specifically because I don't know how long this podcast will be listened to in the future, midfield has been king. It has been more important to have 5 solid defenders, midfielders, than having 3 strikers. Why? Because midfielders have the option of getting more points per goal they score, and they get the point from the clean sheet. And strikers do not benefit from clean sheets at all. And it all depends on the area in which you're playing in. You might have 3 great strikers who score every other game week, and that's fine. Or you might find midfielders who are always scoring and assisting, and that might be better. If you have somebody like Salah or players who fit that mold, you are going to get so many points. And at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is configure your team in the best way possible to get you more points. So it might not make sense sometimes to have 5 defenders playing, but it depends. The 5 players could be from teams that are keeping clean sheets. And then in that case, it's valuable because sometimes it's easier to defend than to score. So you have to be willing to notice trends that are happening and adjust your team and its formation accordingly. So by this point, you must be wondering, how do I know whether I have a good player or not? The truth is, it is tricky. A good player is a good player, but will he perform? That's the tough part. That's why it's so tricky and difficult, because every single manager puts up players that they think will perform. So how do you figure out who is performing? Well, the oldest way is to start off by choosing the best performers in the recent past. And by that I mean there have been some consistent performers. If you look at the past, you will know players like Lampard, Haaland, Salah, Henry, Ruud. So there are some no-brainers, and that's how you should start. You start by choosing the easiest pickings. And then from there, when your money goes down, that's when you start trying to gamble. And you will find that, in theory, the most expensive players are the players who have proven themselves to be consistent. And that's where the real value lies. You might find somebody who is undervalued for whatever reason. Like maybe, for example, Bruno Fernandes tends to be undervalued because he's in a bad team and his teammates do not finish the chances he creates. If they have a good striker this year, or if their players have developed further, or if their manager's tactics finally start working, you could find that he is doing better now because people are just finishing his chances, yet he's the same player, but he's 7.5 or 8.5 instead of 14. And that's how you look for undervalued gems, people who you believe are undervalued for the wrong reason, or now maybe circumstances have changed and their team is looking better. As the season progresses, players will improve in their form and lose their form at different points, and it's not linear. And by that, I mean, it's not predicted that one will lose and then this one will pick up. Everybody has their own circumstances, and that's what our job as managers is, to decide who is performing well right now, get him into my team. Who is dropping in their form, get him out of my team and replace him with somebody better in terms of form. And remember, fantasy is not a game about who is the better player. It is a game about who is in form. You're trying to become the best person at detecting form and profiting from it in terms of points. So as the season progresses, it's good to keep an open mind and to be able to adjust to changes as they're happening. How do you figure these things out? So there are podcasts like this one, which will try to tell you who is performing and who isn't. And there are websites and YouTube channels for many other creators. There are sites like the Fantasy Premier League site itself, which has statistics which you can look at to decide what's happening. You could also look at the fixture list. There's something they call FDR, fixture difficulty rating. And you will see whether your player is about to play 5 difficult games versus another player who's about to have 5 easy games. And you try to decide, is your player team agnostic? And by that I mean, will he score against anybody like Salah? It didn't matter who you put in front of Salah, he would score. But the other players who will score when they play easier opposition. And you need to know how to balance that kind of a thing. Now, there are ways to plan your team. Some people decide to go by fixtures. They choose their team based on the fixtures. And there are others who choose players based on their name. Like, for example, Haaland is a big name. Salah is a big name. So you choose those two and then you figure out the rest. While the others who have a template, who are like, from game week 1 to 5, this is what I'm going to do. Then from game week 5 to 10, this is what I'm going to do. And then there are others who use the algorithms. Now, because of AI, there are people who believe they have cracked the code as to who will perform, and it is hit or miss. Then there are others like scouts, people who have played this for years, who believe that they know more than others who will perform better. It may work, it may not. Then you have others who are simple. They just follow whatever number one is doing. And by number one, I mean number one globally. Remember, at the beginning of the season, you were put into a global league. There's a global number one. Some people just sort of use that. There are people who pay to join tips and communities that give you good advice. And in theory, this will help you win. I hope that you are getting the idea that there are many ways to approach this. There's some people who are purely stats driven, and there are very many sites that will provide you the statistics that will help you make informed decisions. There are some people who just go with their gut. And the truth is, there is no one approach. I think the best approach is something that combines a little bit of everything, but also the mindset of remaining open and honest about what you're seeing will help you. The Fantasy Premier League site itself has a dedicated stats option and tab which will give you information such as the total points, meaning who has gotten the most points so far, and that might show you that, oh, the best player has the most points, so this is the guy I should have. It gives you stats such as round points, meaning who has gotten the most points in this round, price, what is their current value, the team percentage of which a player is owned by. For example, you might find somebody like Salah is owned by 90% of all managers. Minutes played, this will show you how often a player plays, and that might be helpful in helping you decide in choosing bench players who get minutes. Goal scored is obvious. Who has scored the most goals? Who has the most assists? Clean sheets, who has the most? Goals conceded, who concedes the most? So that you can decide to not choose those players. Or alternatively, have a strategy of going against those players who concede the most. Who scores the most own goals? A stat you should know so that you do not choose that player. Penalties saved, that will help you choose the goalkeeper. Penalties missed, that will make you avoid a penalty taker. Yellow cards, it will make you avoid players who get yellow cards and red cards. Saves, it will show you the keeper who makes the most saves. Bonus, the players who have gotten the most bonus points, that could help you choose. And the list goes on and on. And what I'm trying to show you is that there are options to try and help you figure out the most efficient team you can put together. I hope that has been a good introduction. And I guess the next question is, why would you want to play fantasy football? One, it is fun and it is more challenging than you think, which makes it much more entertaining. And then if you join a community like, let's say, ours or your group of friends, it helps you sort of stay in touch with others in a different way. And it also generates a lot of banter, which is good. And if you're a football fan, this is a good way to force you to learn about players that you know very little about, also to learn about teams that you didn't know much about. For example, like if you've been playing over the last 2 years, you'd really come to appreciate Bournemouth and what Iraola has done at that place in a way that you couldn't if you were still focused on your primary team. It makes you a more well-rounded and all-rounded person in terms of understanding and knowing the Premier League. Also, depending on the league you join and if you perform really well, you could get a reward. So there's that too. Outside that, I think I've done my job of introducing fantasy football to you. I hope that this gives you enough time to think about it and to join our league as well. Well, until the season starts, have a great day.